Hello everybody and welcome to Alan History Nerd. In this video I'm going to look at presidential elections, in particular looking at campaign finances, and there's some really big numbers involved in this. So what does the A-level spec say? Well, it says the role of campaign finance and the current legislation on campaign finance, including the McCain Feingold reforms 2002 and the Citizens United versus the FEC in 2010. So we're going to look at the role of campaign finance, and we're going to look at those bits of legislation. We're going to go a bit further back as well and look at set the scene really in terms of where this has gone. I mean, really, the feeling in a lot of America now and internationally as we look in on America is that campaign spending in America is now completely out of control. There are a variety of bits of legislation and things have been put in place to try and keep a control on it, but generally loopholes are then found and it expands even further, and this leads to this real concern that actually you do need to be either A, really wealthy yourself, or B, supported by very wealthy people if you can successfully run to be president. So if we start the kind of real cornerstone of legislation on campaign funding, we got the Federal Election Campaign Act of 1974. This was a response to Nixon's corruption in Nixon's campaign in '72, and in particular to the Watergate scandal. It aimed to reduce the influence of wealthy donors and equalise the spending between the two candidates. We see the creation of the Federal Election Commission in 1976, which provided this idea of matching funds, and the idea was that a certain amount of funds that a candidate raised, then public fund would match that, and the idea was to try and level the playing field a bit. But this public money came with strings attached. In 2008, Obama didn't take it, and McCain did, and really since then the taking of the matching funds has kind of ceased. And there were some other key actions if we go back into the 70s. So we got Buckley v. Aiello in '76. The Supreme Court ruled that individuals and political action committees, or PACs, could not be restricted in terms of their spending, seen as an issue of freedom of speech. In 1979, Congress opened up the use of soft money on voter registration activities and party building. So this kind of soft money, it's not money spent directly on the candidate, but it's kind of on things that will help them win, really. And then this meant that any restrictions on the hard money, the money directly spent by the campaign, it started to lose a lot of their teeth because people found ways around it, and they just spent loads and loads of soft money, and so it starts to have a big impact on the campaigns. The Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002. Now, this is one known as the McCain Feingold Law, and John McCain, Republican, and Russell Feingold, Democrat, they got together and they created this. Is why it's bipartisan, so you've got a Republican and a Democrat, and again it was this idea that the spending on election campaigns had got completely out of hand. So the national party committees, the Republican and the Democrats, were no longer allowed to spend soft money. Union and corporate money cannot be spent on broadcast ads that mention a candidate in a federal election. So that would be someone going for the House or the Senate, or obviously for the presidency, within 60 days of the general election, and there's a 30-day one for primaries as well. It banned the contributions from foreign nationals. Candidates had to verbally endorse all their ads. So if you've seen campaign ads and the candidate turns up at the end and goes, "My name is and I endorse this message," then that's because of this act in 2002. The limits on individual contributions increased to $2,300 and were kind of linked to inflation for every other year. But again, people started to find ways around it. There were the 527s that followed this, and it's relating to a tax code that these groups were registered under, and they spent money on elections, making use of loopholes, and therefore continuing the influence of the wealthy. So therefore the McCain Feingold Law Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002, it does do something. It does restrict things again, but again we start to immediately start to see holes in it. And so we've got these PACs, these political action committees, and they're designed to get round these limits on contributions to a party or candidate, e.g. by corporations or labour groups. And in 2002 to 2010, we've seen a lot of action from these political action committees. They raise money, they spend it to get candidates elected, or actually you get colleagues which are negative, in fact. They spend money to stop someone getting elected, be that a senator, a member of the House, or a presidential candidate. Now, normally what they do is they'd raise money and they would just hand it to the candidate to spend however they saw fit. And this was largely the way that the PACs worked 2002 through to 2010. We then get Citizens United versus FEC, the Federal Elections Commission, and the corporate and labour organisations were given the same rights as individuals in terms of free speech, meaning that they couldn't be limited on what they could spend without elections. And in terms of freedom, you can see the point behind this. So you kind of go, well, as an individual, I should be able to spend whatever I want on elections, and obviously that's come earlier, and then it's going right out. And as a labour organisation or corporation, I should be able to spend whatever. It's my money as a corporation or as labour. It's our money. We want to spend it on getting this person elected. They should be allowed to. And the problem with that is it just unleashes this huge inflation of spending and this idea that we've got these different groups with too much power and influence. So this decision in 2010, along with SpeechNow.org versus the Federal Election Commission, led to PACs kind of declining in the rise of what were known as SuperPACs. And these are what are known as expenditure-only committees. And that is they spend money in the election, but they don't give it to the candidate. And again, it's getting around some of these, the rules that we're saying, well, candidate spending is limited. Well, yeah, candidate spending can be limited. But if you've got these super PACs who have completely unlimited spending and can spend whatever they like, then we get into this situation again with the cost of elections being phenomenally high. And so they aim again is supporting or a particular candidate or defeating a particular candidate. But they don't or aren't allowed to give money directly to the candidate. Now, again, some say this is an important outlet in political speech, or is it a step to allow unlimited elections benefiting the interests of the wealthy and the powerful? And so is this something that is pro-democracy or anti-democracy, actually? In the 2016 election, super PACs played a huge role. For Clinton, we see prioritised USA action. I said there was some mind-blowing amounts of money in this. $192 million they spent. They're a progressive liberal group. They previously supported Obama. It's mainly funded by wealthy individuals. On Trump's side, we saw again. We've got Rebuilding America Now, which it raised $22.6 million, started by wealthy friends of Trump, and so a very wealthy man running for presidency has lots of very wealthy friends. They set up a super PAC and spend money on his behalf. Our Principles PAC, which was set up, it was an anti-Trump one. It spent $19 million, and its main aim was just to stop Trump getting elected. So we're seeing a lot of people spending a lot of money. Also in 2016, we saw this growth of these new groups known as hybrid PACs or carry committees. And they would give a limited amount of money, so they'd abide by the PAC rules, a limited amount of money to candidates, and then they would spend loads of extra money like a super PAC. So they kind of a hybrid. They're doing a bit of both. They're doing a bit of giving money to the candidate like a PAC, and a bit of money, then a lot of money spent like a super PAC. Correct the Record was one that worked on behalf of Clinton, spent $10 million. It made use of an FEC 2006 ruling on there was in its internet exemption that meant material posted for free online was outside regulation. So again, the idea of limiting or controlling what's going on is seen as having fallen down here. During the primary sessions, it attacked Sanders, and then during the general election, it attacked Trump. And we see the power here of a PAC, or super PAC, or hybrid PAC as it is in this case. And then we've got Great America, which was a pro-Trump one, spent $28 million on a series of adverts. It was pro-veteran, it was pro-military, it was pro-Trump. It made use of some quite controversial things. It made use of the Orlando tragedy, in which there was a massacre at a gay bar, and it made use of this as to warn about imported terrorism coming into the United States, and you made use of a kind of very emotional interview with a widow from the Benghazi attack in 2012, in which American service people were killed, and they used this to attack Clinton, and the Republicans had long wanted to hold Obama and Clinton and other members of his cabinet, of Obama's cabinet, to account for what happened in the Benghazi attack. And so they played a big role, and we can definitely see the significance in the 2016 election. But I mean, the real one that, in terms of money, that really stands out there is this $192 million spent by Prioritize USA Action, which is pro-Clinton, and obviously Clinton loses. So it's not always necessarily the case that outspending will lead to outperforming, but there does seem to be a degree of connection there. And again, now for some proper eye-watering numbers, we reckon Trump and groups supporting him have spent over $1 billion already, and that's looking at data from the beginning of October. So I've seen numbers as high as kind of 1.3, 1.4 billion already. There have been conflicting reports over whether his campaign is been hitting some kind of financial issues, that they don't have the disposable money that Biden's campaign does. Biden is said to have greater cash reserves going into the final 3 weeks of campaigning, and there's reports that he's outdoing Trump in fundraising, and that there are little political commentators who look at this, and they look at how the super PACs are going, and they look at the amount of money that the campaigns are able to raise, and they start to see this as a way of predicting the election. Because if you're able to fundraise, and if your super PACs who are supporting you are able to fundraise, then the people giving money for a reason, and one of the things that is likely to give a big boost to your funding is if people think you're going to win. And so again, we see this idea connecting large amounts of spending with success, which again, I mean, we're talking billions of dollars. If it didn't make any difference, why would people be spending billions of dollars? We did see, I mean, some really ridiculous with Bloomberg, who was attempting to get on the Democrat ticket earlier in the 2020 cycle, and he spent obscene amounts of money. Again, didn't bring him a huge amount of success. Now he's put his weight behind Biden. So it doesn't guarantee success, but it's a bit like the things when we look at stuff like advertising. Why would people spend millions and billions of dollars on things if they didn't work? And it might also be the case if you don't, it's not necessarily the spending it, but if you don't spend it and the other guys are, then what kind of position does that lend you to? And it does seem to give possibilities for corruption, and it does seem to be an ongoing kind of arms race that is just escalating and escalating, and the attempts to control it through the various acts and judgments that we've seen don't really seem to be working, and it's going to be a very difficult thing to control because you've got this principle of freedom of speech. And so spending money is a way of politically expressing yourself. It's very difficult to see how this can be brought back under a relatively decent level or properly controlled. And we've got the issue again of ideas of state funding, which again we also see when we look at UK politics. Thank you very much for watching. Please make sure you like the video if you found that helpful. Please leave me any comments, any thoughts you've got. If you haven't done so already, then please subscribe. And the Alan History Nerd channel has a whole range of politics videos as well as a load of history ones. I'm trying to cover the entire spec as we do it of A-level politics, and so if you subscribe you get notifications, and hopefully we will be able to build a really full picture to help you with your studies in these rather uncertain times. Thank you very much for watching.